It's away into the westerns, the place a man should go, where the fishing's always easy. They got no ice or snow, but I'll haul down the sail where the bays run together. Bide away the days by the hills of Idaho. Now the Plymouth girls are fine, they put their hearts in your hand, and the Plymouth boys are able, first-class sailor every man. But I'll haul down the sail where the bays run together. Bide away the days by the hills of Idaho. Now the trouble with old Martyr, you don't try her in a trawler, for those Bay of Biscay swells, they roll your head from off your shoulder. All down you sail where the bays run together. Bide away the days by the hills of Idaho. So the winters drive you crazy, and the fishing's hard and slow. You're a damn fool if you stay, but there's no better place to go. All down you sail where the bays run together. Bide away the days by the hills of Idaho.
I shall never forget that homeward passage back to Castine. I was first mate aboard the Lyda B, and Captain Phillips was at the command, but he was below decks in his cabin with a cruel rheumatism, and I was as good as in command. I went below decks with the lead and said, Captain Phillips, we are too close in with the land. The fog is too thick, the wind is too fresh to be carrying so much canvas. May I shorten sail? And he said, Mr. Bliss, I want you to take that lead that you are carrying with you and heave it and bring it below and let me see it. Well, I heaved the lead myself, for I wished no slip-ups. And I brought it below and said, Captain Phillips, it's 5 fathoms with sand, sir, and a cracking good breeze. Let me see the lead, Mr. Bliss. Well, I passed it to him, and he held it in the palm of his right hand and scraped a bit of the sand out of the hollow at the bottom of the lead, which the lead had brought up from the ocean floor, and placed it on the end of his tongue. Staring at me with his steel-gray eyes, he said, Mr. Bliss, don't you mean 7 fathoms? Well, I subtracted 2 to be on the safe side, sir. Right, Mr. Bliss, right. I am glad to find you so particular. We are close in with the land and cannot be too careful. Now I want you to keep this vessel northeast, half-east, straight as a gun barrel. You will come within earshot of the breakers off Castine in just 15 minutes' time. If you do not hear the sound of the breakers, then let me know it. An open ear for these breakers, Mr. Bliss, for we cannot be too careful, and bend on all sail, for we shall bring this vessel home in style. Well, I went back on deck, and sure enough, just 15 minutes had passed, and we heard the sound of breakers off Castine. Luff, luff and shake her, I cried, and the vessel was brought to the wind in an instant and anchored, and the dark line of Castine to our stern told me that all was well. But I could not understand how the old man could navigate so well with nothing more than just a pinch of sand to go on. So I took the lead and spun it round my head like David and the sling and heaved it high on Castine shore, no more than 250 feet to our stern. I hauled it back aboard and brought it below to show the old man. Captain Phillips, it blows spitefully in flaws and spits thick. We have gone more than 15 minutes' time and still have not heard the sound of breakers. You have not held this vessel straight, Mr. Bliss. Now let me see that lead. Well, he took it and he scraped a bit more of the sand off the bottom in the little hollow and placed it on the end of his tongue and spat it in disgust all over the cabin floor. Mr. Bliss, I take back what I said to you. You have held this vessel straight as a gun barrel. There is no fault in your steering. But I regret to inform you that Castine has sunk and we have sailed directly over Ma'am Hackett's compost heap.
This is a song from Newfoundland, too. It was written by a fellow named Otto Kelland, who was a fisherman. And is one of these characters that really likes his work.
Take me back to my western boat. Let me fish off Cape St. Mary's, where the hog down sail and the foghorns wail, with my friends the Browns and the Clarys, in the swells of old St. Mary's. Let me feel my dory lift to the broad Atlantic cumbers, where the tide rips swirl and the wild duck furl, and the ocean calls the numbers, in the swells of old St. Mary's. Let me sail up golden bays, with my oilskins all a-streamin', from the thunder squall where I hauled me trawl, and the old Cape Ann a-gleamin', in the swells of old St. Mary's. Take me back to my western boat. Let me fish off Cape St. Mary's, where the hog down sail and the foghorns wail, with my friends the Browns and the Clarys, in the swells of old St. Mary's.
I was clamming in the flats, and I come across a body in the kelp. It was face down, and before I turned it over, I decided to go up and make sure that it was not old Tom who tended the light on the point. I knocked on his door, and in 3 minutes, old Tom opened it up, And I said, Tom, there's a body down in the rocks amongst the kelp. He said, was it wearing a red shirt? Yes. Did it have green trousers? Yup. Gray hat still on him? Yes. Dark hair? Uh-huh. Did he have boots on? I said, yes. Was they low boots? Yes, they was. Are you sure they were not high boots turned down low? Well, now come to think of it, Tom, I said, they was high boots turned down low. Oh, he said, thank God it weren't me.
This is about a courtship. It's a Newfoundland song.
When I first came to Trinity in the brave old days of yore, it was there I took a stroll all around Green Island shore. It was there I met a pretty fair maid, she's the girl that I adore. A more handsome little female I never saw before. I've got as fine a bully boat as ever rode the ground. She can beat anything with sails from the horse chops to the sound. And what's more, I've got a big pool gun with a 5-foot barrel or more. And 'tis for your sake I'll shoulder her all around Green Island shore. I've got a feather bed, I've got a watch, and of a new house I've the frame. And I'll take you home to Robin Hood if you will share my name. And if Billy Hookey tries to win your heart, I'll leave him in his gore and sail far away from Trinity and the dear Green Island shore. To wed you now, dear Johnny, would be a poor lookout. For you have got 2 very small legs which scarce carry you about. And what's more, you cannot stand the cold of a cold and wintry day. I'd rather marry a weasel, so Johnny, go away.
Holman Day was the Rudyard Kipling of Maine. It was around the turn of the century that he wrote his most famous poem, The Kennebec Mariner. I guess I never told you, Sonny, of the stranding and the wreck of the steamboat Ezra Johnson that run up the Kennebec. That was for the time of steam cars, and the Johnson filled the bill on the route between Augusta and the town of Waterville. She was built old-fashioned model with a bottom flat shore palm, and a paddle wheel behind her drove by one great churning arm. Couldn't say that she was speedy, sloshed along and made a touse. Couldn't go much faster than a man could tow a house. Still, she skipped and skived tremendous, dodged the rocks and skun the shoals in a way that boats of these days couldn't do to save their souls. Didn't draw no mount of water, went on top instead of through. This is how there come to happen what I'm going to tell to you. Ain't no need to keep you guessing, for I know you won't suspect how that thundering old Ez Johnson ever happened to get wrecked. She was overdue one evening. Fog come down most awful thick. 'Twas 'bout like navigating inside a feather tick. Proper caper was to anchor, but she seemed to run all right, so we humped her, kept her sloshing, though 'twas risky, through the night. Things went on all right till morning, but along about 3:30, the ship went dizzy, blind and crazy. Waves seemed worst I ever see. Up she went, and down she scuttered. Sometimes seemed to stand on end, then she'd wallops sideways, crossways, in a way, by gosh, to send shivers down your spine. Then she'd teeter, fetch a spring, and take a bounce, then squat down, sir, on her haunches with a most Jerusalem jounce. Folks got up and run a-screaming, forced the wheelhouse, grabbed at me, thought we'd missed a gusty landing and had sailed clear out to sea. Fairly shot me full of questions, but I said was just a blow. Still, that didn't seem to soothe them, for there weren't no wind, you know. Yes, sir, spite of all that churning, weren't a whisper of a breeze. No excuse for all that upset and them strange and dreadful seas. Couldn't spy a thing around us. Everywhere 'twas pitchy black, and I couldn't seem to comfort them poor critters on my back. Couldn't give them information, for 'twas dark's a cellar shelf. Couldn't tell 'em nothin' 'bout it, for I didn't know myself. So I gripped the Johnson's tiller, kept the rudder rigging taut, kept a prayin', chawed tobacco, give her steam, and let her swat. Now, my friends, just listen steady. When the sun come out at 4, we weren't tossin' in no breakers off no stern and rock-bound shore, but I'd missed the gall-derned river, and I swear this here is true. We had sailed 8 miles cross-country in a heavy autumn dew. There I was, clear up in Sydney, and the tossins and the rolls simply happened 'cause we'd tackled several miles of cradle knolls. Sun come out and dried the dew up. There we was, a stranded wreck, and they soaked me $18 cartage to the Kennebec.
McLean was a Canadian. He had a little schooner. He used to run it with his son sometimes with another man. And as many other people did, he got in the rum running trade here. And he was caught. He was arrested and thrown in jail in Massachusetts, and his schooner was impounded and sold for auction. And it was 5 years he was in there. And when he got out, it took him 2 years to get back home. This is McLean's Coming. Now when the wind is bright with the spring and the snow is gone away,
The days grow long and the time has come to hoist my sail and go. And I'll hear no more your dungeon door, nor eat your bitter beans. Surely it's a long and a windy road for the straight to Canso. I'll go down to the Naskeg Sound, where the tide runs fast and strong. The water is deep and the hills are steep and the nights are cold and long. And through the rocks of Jericho I'll wind my weary way. Roll her off for Sable Island and the grey seas of Funday. At the spring and the time has come to go. Ice my sail on a northern wind and I'll be on my way. Oh, but there's no one can go with me and there's no one by my side. Surely it's a long and a windy road till McLean's home.
Cutler Harbor? You asked me about Cutler. Why, that was where I was born and raised. Lived there all my days, man and boy, following the sea. Well, I say following the sea. I ain't never done much blue water sailing, mostly just coasting. You see, I got myself a little jib and mainsail boat, the Nancy and Betsy. And me nephew Willie and me, we runs it. We don't carry no hands. We really don't need no hands, 'cause though the mainsail's kind of heavy for Willie and me, we just ease the peak and let the mainsail flap. Well, now, you'd think we'd have known every ripple and reef from here to Eastport and back again, but then again I recollect we was taking on a deck load of lumber for transporting off to Ram Island. And we got in off Goathead there when there come a hail from shore. It seems they was having a hair set-in party, what you might call a christening. Well, we dropped anchor. We lowered the jib, but we didn't have to lower the mainsail. The mainsail's kind of heavy for Willie and me, so we just eased the peak and let the mainsail flap. Well, we went ashore there, and when I tell you that they had 2 barrels of Barbados rum jacked up there on the shore, you'll understand me when I tell you that they were patting the baby's hair good and proper. Well, after a while, Willie and me, we started patting a few hairs ourselves. And then I says to Willie, look, if we're going to get out of here with this deck load of lumber, we better get a move on. So we went back aboard the Nancy and Betsy. We weighed anchor, raised the jib, but we didn't have to raise the mainsail. The mainsail was kind of heavy for Willie and me. We had just eased the mainsail and let it flap. So we raised the peak and set sail out of there, and were gone for no more than 5 minutes' time when they come in one of them fogs you get around Cutler, so thick you can't see your nose in front of your face. Well, I says, Willie, where be we? He says, I don't know. Well, I says, Willie, you go below decks and bring up that coastwise pilot, and maybe we'll find out where we be. Well, he brung it up, and it were kind of a tattered edition, and he no sooner got it open to the Cutler page when there come along a little puff of wind and blew that page overboard. Well, I says, Willie, what are we going to do now? He says, I don't know. Well, I says, Willie, I think we just better sit and think, and maybe it'll come to us what we should do. So we dropped anchor, we lowered the jib, but we didn't have to lower the mainsail. We just eased the peak and let the mainsail flap. And we sat there and we thought. He thought and I thought and he thought, until finally it come to me. I stood bolt upright. I slapped him on his back, and Willie, I said, I've got it. I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to weigh anchor. We're going to raise the jib. We're going to raise the peak. We're going to set sail out of here, and we're going to keep a-sailing, by God for mighty, until we get over into this next page here, and then we'll know where we be.
The girls of Cascais, they're strong across the shoulder. They don't give a man advice, they don't want to cook his supper. All down your sail where the bays run together. Bide away the days by the hills of Idaho. It's away into the westers, the place a man should go, where the fishing's always easy, they got no ice or snow. But I'll haul down the sail where the bays run together. Bide away the days by the hills of Idaho. Sail where the bays run together. Bide away the days by the hills of Idaho.
The proceeding was made possible by a grant from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.